Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Black Doctor Talk podcast. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Holmes, and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Well, today, I am not here to disappoint. I am here with another amazing guest. This is in the form of Dr. Carlos Jermaine Richard. Dr. Richard has an extensive career in public sector work, where he is a dedicated and tenured professional with a strong background in leadership development, diversity and cultural competency, and intercultural development. He has served 23 years with the state of Oregon, the Department of Human Services, and Oregon Health Authority in Holistic Family Services, Management, Union President, as well as serving as Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Practitioner. Woo! This man does a lot. He's an author, consultant, motivational speaker, professor, and a public servant leader. Guys, help me and welcome me, Dr. Carlos Jermaine Richard, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, my friend. I'm not sure I can live up to that introduction, but I'll do my best to live up to those awesome words you said about me. I'm just happy to be here, happy to be a part of this podcast today.
Listen, you're doing some phenomenal things, but you and I both know you're doing some really great work, but also some deep work. And so I definitely want to dive into the work that you're doing. We'll talk about the doctorate and how you're blending all that together to live this very whole life that you got going on. So before we start there, though, we got to know you didn't get here just by happenstance, right? So tell us about who was young Carlos Jermaine Richard. Who were you? What did you enjoy doing?
I think the young Dr. Richard was a young man raised right in the heart of Portland, Oregon, in the Northeast area. Attended the historically Black high school, Thomas Jefferson High School. My mom, my aunts, my uncles, everybody in my family, for the most part, went to Jefferson High School. It is just situated in the historically Black neighborhood in the Albina district here in Portland, Oregon. I was involved in sports. My dad, my mother kept me involved in sports. Believe it or not, someone may look at my resume or my CV and see the educational accomplishments, but it's not that I struggled in school. I just didn't understand the relevance of a grade. So why would somebody give me an A, a B, a C? I felt that one single grade did not measure the fullness or the totality of who I was as an individual. But rest assured, when my basketball career was done, I had a knee injury when I was at Colorado Christian University there in Denver, Colorado, which ended my career after my junior year. I could no longer play. And once that happened, I began to really embrace and engage with education. And here I am today. And I owe all of this, not just to God. I owe everything to God, but God gives us good parents. And I had a great, great father who developed me, who mentored me, who coached me, who disciplined me, but also encouraged me. I say that, Dr. Holmes, because my dad died when I was 18 years old. So he never saw me graduate from college. He never saw me walk across the stage and get 2 master's degrees. He never saw me earn my doctorate. He never saw me get married. But how I live my life today is an ode and a testament to my father, who did, I think, such a wonderful job in raising me.
Woo! You want to start off like that? I mean, you want to go? Wow. I mean, I could go a lot of different places. I got to go back to one question though. What position did you play in basketball?
I was a 2 guard. I was about 6'3" back then. My playing weight was about 215 pounds. So my nickname, if you ever come to Portland or you meet somebody from Portland that was a part of the basketball culture, if you tell them you know 3 Los, they'll know exactly who you're talking about. That was my nickname.
Wow. Well, I want to ask you another question, because I know for many people, they don't know much about Portland. And so I want you to talk a little bit about the Black community in Portland and how much it meant to you.
Growing up, the Black community, of course, was the cornerstone of the neighborhood. I'll start with some individuals who had a barbershop, they had a nightclub, and they just had a myriad and plethora of businesses in the Black community. That was Mr. Paul and Geneva Knowles. and they had a barbershop on Williams and Going Street. And I just remember my dad taking us to that barbershop every Saturday. Now, the barbershop was not big. It was one of those old school barbershops that you're probably familiar with being in Atlanta. This was back in the day prior to cable. So there was no big screen or flat screen TVs. It was like two, 12-inch TVs, hung up in the corner.
Yeah.
And that barbershop was a beacon in the community where Black men gathered. And my dad took me there every single Saturday to get my hair cut. We also had some individuals in the community, an individual that is actually well known around this country, Ray Leary. He and Tony Hobson Sr. started an at-risk youth program called Self-Enhancement Incorporated. But Ray Leary was an early mentor of mine, and he was the individual who really encouraged me to get into social services and to get into working with Black youth and especially young Black men. I did that early on in my career. We had a very strong Black community, even though we experienced some of the same tragedies and atrocities as other cities around the country with the crack cocaine epidemic, gangs. We still had a very, very strong and vibrant community. I think what has been disappointing for me, especially during my time when I served as chair for the Oregon Commission on Black Affairs, gentrification came into the community, and it really separated, it really divided. Dr. Holmes, we don't have a Black community today. I'm sorry to say that in Portland. Most individuals who are from Portland that understand Portland will tell you we don't have the same community today that we had in years past. And of course, that's due to gentrification. We get that. One of the things that I hope to do as I begin to re-enter that space is, because a lot of this, Dr. Holmes, I've been focusing on education and trying to catch folks before they get out of college and go work with our people in the school system. But one of the things I hope to do as I re-engage back in this space, we got to rectify our own shortcomings. We lost our community because we allowed our community to be lost. And that is hurtful to me today. All of our Black community, I'll say, Dr. Holmes, lastly, is pushed out to what we call East Portland. And so it's not that crime reduced in my neighborhood. Crime was just replaced and transitioned to a different community. Overall, I will say, for me, Portland is a great place to live. I've traveled all over this country. And guess what? After college, I came right back home to live in my community, to help my community be the best community it could possibly be.
And let me tell you, you've done a great job. You have been fully engaged in trying to support initiatives within the Portland area, within your community. You've done so many things in terms of work, volunteerism, serving, and in addition to just working, right? So let's tackle the education side. So you go, you get your undergraduate degree. What did you learn from being an undergraduate?
I majored in politics or political science, and I was always drawn to politics. I was always drawn to law. I always tell my nephews I sort of kicked myself because I actually should have went to law school. But be that as it may, one of the things I learned in politics was the lack of a balanced education, especially for folks who represent an ethnic and diverse background, culture, tradition, or norm, right? There were, for example, in political science, there were a lot of courses about early American history, about colonial history. We did have a very, very strong, and still have it today at Portland State University, a strong Black Studies department, but they were not offering majors. They were only offering minors. And the great Dr. Darrell Milner, I would be remiss if I did not mention his name. He is a retired professor from Portland State University. And as I began to take political science courses and learn about overall American history, I took a lot of courses in Black history. And that really opened my mind as a young man in my 20s to the realities of this community in Portland, and more so to the reality of the world's Dr. Holmes from this point, from the standpoint of how through systemic and structural racism, most Black people who did not have an opportunity to grow up like I did were forced to be in this position that they would otherwise not be in. And what began to open my eyes is the role that our government played in that, not just going back to 1619, but in 1990, in the 2000s, and what we see today, especially with a lot of documentaries that are coming out about how the government participated in the destruction of our people and continue to play a role in that destruction today. Education gave me the motivation that I needed to help first to help my people understand the system, but also when I'm at Warner Pacific University and also taught a class at George Fox University for individuals who say they want to go teach, who say they want to go help ethnic and diverse communities. My job is to help them to understand your role in that, not just your walking in. Yeah. What is your role in that? And first, if we're really honest, Dr. Holmes, you got to be invited into this community. So education, political science gave me everything that I needed to want to take my education further to help my people and to help society.
I'm over here shaking my foot. I'm saying, talk, sir, talk. Now, if you guys are like me and saying, this brother is preaching, he is, okay? This man is preaching. How do I know that? This man has 2 master's degrees. He has a master's from Warner Pacific University in Biblical and Theological Studies and a master's in Divinity from George Fox University. So you're just not thinking that you're hearing this voice. This is the voice, okay, guys? Just be clear. This man is giving you some gems, but he's giving it to you from a place that some people aren't going to connect to, all right? So let's go ahead and establish it. So let's talk about what led you to those 2 degrees.
I think what led me to those 2 degrees, I'm a 5th generation churchman. And I grew up in the Black church like a lot of my colleagues around the country. And there was a great friend of mine. His name is Mr. Ron Herndon. And I have to give a shout out to Mr. Ron Herndon. I became close with Mr. Herndon while I was in high school. And Mr. Herndon actually was president of the National Head Start. He lived right here in Portland, Oregon. He was president of the National Head Start. And it was through his encouragement, it was through his activism, I got further introduced into the civil rights movement. And when I began to study Dr. King in high school, Jesse Jackson, actually my favorite civil rights leader is not either one of those, although they're great. For me, it's the Reverend Dr. Ralph David Abernathy.
Yeah.
Right? And when I began to see the role that he played in the civil rights movement, the confidant, the best friend of King, I asked myself a question. How can the preacher, post-civil rights, play a role in the politics that continue to harm our people in order to lift our people from the ghettos that they are a part of? So, not only acknowledging my call to the ministry as a preacher, I felt I had to do one thing. I had to be educated.
Yeah.
So that's what led me to go to Warner Pacific and earn the Master's of Arts in Biblical and Theological Studies. I did my master's thesis on the theology of singles ministry. I stopped there, and then I had this nudge in my system that was telling me to do more. So that's when I matriculated into George Fox University. Now, I got 2 master's degrees. I got the second one, really, Dr. Holmes, by default.
Okay.
Because I wasn't trying to earn another master's degree. I wanted to get into the doctorate program. But I needed a couple of additional credits to be eligible for this program. Dr. Holmes, by the time I looked up, I was 3 credits short. So they let me write a 15-page paper on the future of Black theology. And James Cone, the very famous James Cone, I used his material to write my book, to write the paper, and then I entered into the Doctor of Ministry program. So here's what I encourage any preacher. If you're going to be in ministry, I treat ministry like I treat a hospital. When you and I go to the hospital, Dr. Holmes, we see our primary care physician or we see a surgeon. They have on that white coat, I'm looking for 2 initials in front of their name.
Yes.
Or 2 initials after their name that lets me know they are qualified to do the surgery. They're qualified to give me advice about my health. So that's the same way I feel about ministry. If I'm going to be in ministry, standing behind a pulpit, articulating and pontificating messages from a sacred text, I need to have an education that backs me up in doing that. Now, I believe in the Spirit. I believe in God. I know he can talk to me, but it's a little easier to hear him when I know what his book says. His book says.
My God, today. That's all. Oh, woo. Listen. Oh, man. You know, I'm sitting here and I've gone through your resume and I'm looking at all the things you've done. And guys, from the time this man has started working, this man has been serving. Go check him out on LinkedIn and we're going to share his information. Everything he done has been from a position of serving because he understands you got to be in it to change it. Yeah. And that is very evident. So in your career right now, let's talk about the function of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is, we know, such a hot topic right now. What are your current efforts in that area?
Part of, since this is Black History Month, I'll share some of my thoughts around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're in Black History Month. We just left celebrating Dr. King. What strikes me, Dr. Holmes, is people are still missing the message around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're still taking, for example, parts of Dr. King's speech about judging people for the content of their character and not the color of their skin. What I'm seeing and what I have been seeing for about the past 15 years is that people want to talk about the safe Dr. King. People want to talk about the Dr. King and the civil rights movement that doesn't challenge them to change internally or psychologically. Where I'm at today is we have to understand the totality of what King was talking about when he spoke about a beloved community. He wasn't talking about a beloved community where everybody of different ethos and ethnic backgrounds would come together and celebrate. He was talking about inclusion into economic and financial markets. The mountaintop speech is not what led to his assassination.
No, sir.
But a lot of people don't understand that. So when people come to me today and say diversity, equity, inclusion, I sit down with them and say, what are you talking about? Diverse what? Equity what?
Yeah.
Inclusion where? We have allowed, when I say we, I'm talking about us, our people. I am a Pan-Africanist at heart. I deal with my people. We have allowed tragedies to happen, and then we've allowed institutions to create positions to muzzle our mouth.
Yes.
The greatest example is when they sang that racist song on the bus at University of Oklahoma. And the first position that was created was a chief diversity officer, and we're going to have this person report to the president. It's all right, if I can use a biblical analogy, to be put in Pharaoh's house. But while you in Pharaoh's house, nothing is changing in the brickyard. So when people say to me, We want greater diversity. If greater diversity does not mean lifting people of ethnic and diverse backgrounds out of impoverished situations, if diversity to me only means difference of race and says nothing about gender and how our Black women are still making less than white women who are still making less than white men, then we can't even have a conversation. Equity what? So if equity is about access into or destroying barriers, Dr. Holmes, a lot of people are saying, oh, we got to tear down white supremacy. Well, what you going to build in its place?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We're talking about inclusion. We've been included. We're sitting at tables. The inclusion for me, Dr. Holmes, is decision-making power. So if you can't include me in the decision, I am nothing more than a figurehead. I am nothing more than a token for an organization.
Yeah.
So the DEI landscape has to change. It has to move. It has to transition. I'll tell you, lastly, Dr. Holmes, what I think DEI should do for us, we have to take DEI back to the civil rights movement. We got to quit asking people. And we got to do what King, Rev. Abernathy, Young, Lowry, one of my favorites, Bayard Rustin. We got to do exactly what they did, and we got to demand what it is that we want for our people. I'll tell you why that's hard for a lot of folks very quickly. We've got these positions. We're making six figures. We've never made this money before. We can send our kids to private school. We can buy a boat. We can go and join the golf club.
Yeah.
King would have never subscribed to this type of lifestyle when all or most of our people are not where we are. So when people say that to me, Dr. Holmes, I like to sit down with folks and get into a discussion and really dig deep and find out what are we talking about in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion. Are we talking about it from a white dominant culture perspective, or are we talking about it from the perspective that we getting ready to lift people out of the doldrums of where they are?
Wow. Wow. So many things I want to say from all of those great words. One of the things I was going to ask you, what is the barrier to fully having DEI in organizations? And you said it beautifully. It is decision-making power. We are at the table, but some of us are no more than chairs at the table. We're just objects sitting around it without a voice, because we make it look as if that we are trying to make diversity and equity and inclusion a huge factor in organizations. And most oftentimes we're not. We are not doing it at all.
And most DEI departments or units or work teams, they don't have a budget.
No.
Their budget is encapsulated within the budget of administration.
Yes.
They might be able to do one conference per year, but in terms of having a budget that is solely for training. The other piece about DEI, my friend, is how do we integrate and incorporate accountability with DEI?
Yeah.
We're seeing a great example with the police chief in Memphis, right?
Yeah.
She fired those officers, and we hear others have been suspended and or fired as well. The problem I have with that, okay, I believe they should have got fired, but I hope that becomes a blueprint, not just for Black officers. I hope it becomes a blueprint for any officer in this country, especially white police officers. We have to have accountability. Dr. Holmes, let's bring it down to the work area. People are in work committing microaggressions, microassaults every day, and there's no accountability. Right? So when we talk about, these barriers, if there's no budget, that's the first barrier. If there's no for violation of policy related to DEI, that's the second barrier. The third barrier is our recruitment efforts will not rise and or increase, and our retention efforts will be severely impacted, which continue to create barriers because we don't have people who come into our organizations to work with the community that we can help them. So we have to have accountability with DEI. It's not enough anymore to say, we're going to send you to training. We got training. What we need now is, how do we hold people accountable? The person that we need to hold accountable is the individual who is accountable for the entire organization.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. Man. Woo. The other thing you talked about was this narrow perspective on DEI. And we want to limit it to race, sometimes sex. When we talk about the diversity within this nation, we've got cultures and groups and subcultures of people that go unacknowledged in organizations because they don't feel they are important enough to then give them a voice. And so you said it beautifully. It's not just about white women making less than white women. One, they're Black, they're women. And then within that, they still probably identify in 10 other categories that we have yet to recognize. And so there's a lot of work in this area. I don't know what it's going to take. And I'll leave this to you to answer. How long or what is it going to take for us to get there? Because there is so much opposition because people are trying to pacify us through imagery. We've got to do deeper work. So what is it going to take off the mask, take away the mirror so we can start looking through the glass doors?
It's going to take a lot of honesty. You look at the situation right now in Florida with Governor DeSantis. And it's not just Governor DeSantis in Florida, it's governors in the Midwest who are not honest about history. When history benefits you, it's hard to be honest about what benefits you.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of honesty. The second piece, I think, Dr. Holmes, in terms of moving DEI to that next level, John Powell would call it targeted universalism. I agree with targeted universalism in concept and principle that, yes, we need to focus our resources specific to communities to provide them to what they need so that they can begin to make life better for them. I would also add to that, and maybe not add to it, but for me, we got to go back and recapture what our forefathers and foremothers did in terms of the civil rights movement, even going back to slavery, to make themselves better.
Yeah.
It is time for us to stop begging people to do for us what we can do for ourselves.
Most definitely.
For us, as Black folks, because this is the Black Doctoral Network, this is the Black Doctors Podcast, so I'm going to talk to Black folks, right? We cannot allow ourselves to assimilate and capitulate to white dominant culture concepts, thinking, and doctrines, and say that now that I'm in a position, I can pull you up. That's the issue. We haven't, some of us have been pulling the others up.
Yeah.
From Multnomah County, I just hired a sister from Florida A&M University to be my senior equity and inclusion analyst. And I was intentional about hiring somebody who was Black to help me do this work. And I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm unapologetic about saying it. Were there the good candidates? Yes. But this sister was the best candidate. So we got to go beyond just pulling each other up. We have to unify together. I think that is the problem for us as Black folks. We are not unified because we've made it. We're doing a lot better. If people really knew the true annual salary of Dr. King, Abernathy, and the civil rights leaders, A. Philip Randall, if they really knew their true annual salary, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference half the time was in debt.
Yeah.
They were not focused on materialistic things. There's nothing wrong with having a Maybach, nothing wrong with having a Rolls Royce, nothing wrong with having a Bentley. But if everybody could be like the brother Robert Smith, show up to do a commencement address and make a decision. I got a quick something I'll share with you, Dr. Holmes. I was at a United Way diversity conference in New Orleans in 2019. I met his aunt. And his aunt, we were having a great discussion, and I asked her about that. She said while they were around Morehouse touring, doing whatever they were doing, none of them that were with Brother Smith had any idea about what he was going to do. She said they were all in the elevator going to the commencement address. She said nobody had an idea. This brother had some type of premonition, some type of epiphany when he looked out on all those Black kids and said, I got your debt. What would it be like, Dr. Holmes, if all of us joined our dear Brother Smith and said, I may not be able to pay your debt, but here's what I'm going to do to help you. We have to reunify ourselves together. We focus too much on disagreements. Oh, well, I don't like Dr. Holmes, so, I can't, what my nephew said, I can't rock with that brother,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
we go and we talk to somebody else, and then we talk to, no, me and Dr. Holmes might not agree on what's best, collard greens and mustards. Right? We may not agree. You come to Portland, I got a plate of collards for you. We may not agree. But one of the things that our forefathers did in the civil rights movement, they kept their disagreements in the back.
Yeah.
And they showed unity in the front. That's what I think the biggest barrier is right now for the Black community. It's just us unifying together, coming up with one vision. And it could be a vision for each geographic region. We don't have to have the same vision in the South as we do where I'm at in the North. But
Right.
if for those of us in the geographic region could coalesce around a vision, I think we would start to see a lot of progress in our children, especially, my friend, in education.
Yeah, I agree with you in so many ways. And if I go back to the Robert Smith story, if we can all find a way to make an investment in Black students, if you may not have the money to do so, but how are you, as you just said, educating them? How are you sowing information, access into areas that they are uninformed? And one of the things that you said that is powerful to me, and I say this all the time, it doesn't matter how much money I make in this world, doesn't matter where I drive and where I live. When I make decisions in life, I don't make decisions for me. I think about my whole family because I am one of few college graduates and the only one with a doctorate. So I can't vote for me. I've got to vote for my mom and my grandmother and my siblings who are still in the trenches trying to do the work on the ground. I can't be selfish enough to think just about me because we haven't come far enough for me to vote in isolation. I've got to vote from a community mindset.
Well, and again, I'm so appreciative of what you said. My baby sister, I thank God for where she is now in life, manager in state government and doing well, but she had kids early. And I took it upon myself with her 3 boys to be as intricately involved in their lives. When our father died, I had to help my mom raise my baby sister. And when she had her first child, she had a second, she had her third child, and she had 3 sons. I knew she couldn't do it by herself, not just financially. When I was in Warner Pacific, Dr. Holmes, doing my first master's degree, her sons would call me and say, Uncle, you want to play catch? And I'm smack dab in the middle of a 25-page paper. But you know what? I dropped everything. I went and got them boys. We were out there 2 and 3 hours playing catch, baseball. They wanted to go from baseball to football to basketball. And then afterwards, these boys is hungry. And we go to McDonald's and I would buy them whatever they wanted. Every promotion I've got, not just a promotion in position, but a promotion in finance.
Yeah.
Has been for my nephews. has been for my baby sister, has been for my mother, who me and my older brother, DeMarcus, we continue to support our mom, as well as my baby sister, Elizabeth, and my twin sister, Christian. Everything we do in life, I just want to reiterate what you said. I want to emphasize it. I want to bold it. And then you know how we do in Word, I want to put a highlight on it. Because what we're saying right here, Dr. Holmes, you and I, is a message that has to continue to reverberate in our community.
Yeah.
I am not doing this for myself. Every volunteer board I've served on right now, I serve on the Oregon Department of Transportation I-5 Bridge Committee. They want to revamp a whole bridge, take out one of the most historically Black middle schools in this state. And I give up my time.
Mm.
And I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of time. And I'm not saying that just to sound important. I honestly don't have a lot of time. But when my great friend, Erica Warren, called me, I said yes. Why? Because it's not just me. We're talking about kids at Harriet Tubman Middle School are going to be potentially displaced because we do need to expand this I-5 bridge. The infrastructure is important, but we got kids who are going to be displaced out of their school, out of the community.
Yes.
If we, and when I say we, I'm talking to our people everywhere. If we fail to give up time in some of the most important areas, I don't just serve, I served as chair for the Oregon Commission on Black Affairs for 4 years. I did that. I'm not just involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion work on one level. Serving on this ODOT committee, I show up with my DEI hat on.
Yeah, yeah.
You see, so what you said, Dr. Holmes, again, I just want to reiterate, reemphasize, bold it, and highlight it. Whatever we do as professionals and practitioners, and again, I'm a Pan-Africanist at heart. I'm doing it with my people in mind. When I speak, I'm speaking with my people in mind.
Yeah.
So this is important for our community, and it's important that we unify and get a vision together. Because again, you and I both know, since King died, April 4, 1968, nothing has changed in the brickyard. We've made more money, but we still getting killed by police.
Yep.
We got education, we're still being denied job opportunities. We got the experience in a particular field, and we're still being overlooked for somebody else who's white, who has no experience.
Yes.
Nothing is changing in the brickyard. So again, I appreciate everything people are doing, but at the end of the day, we really got to come and unify together and push this agenda so that we can help our people. Because listen, to give you a biblical analogy, I'm not just satisfied with the crumbs that fall from the master's table.
No, sir. No, sir. I want the whole meal. And I deserve it. I deserve it. I think we've got to have that mindset. The crumb is not enough. I deserve the whole meal.
And Dr. Holmes, again, we cannot allow the divide and conquer. Don't give me a position because you think I'm not going to articulate and express the issues that are currently happening within an organization and how they not only impact internally, but how they impact externally.
Yeah.
If I can say this real quick, my friend, we got to diversify. We should be taking a hard stand against the food industry for planting fast food restaurants in our communities.
Yes, sir.
We got to take a hard stand against that. I know it might be tough fighting the FDA, but if King can go against presidents, we need to take a stand against that. We on the back end talking about health disparities. We got to get on the front end and start being preventative and talk about how the system is set up in each neighborhood. I was there in that, and I loved Atlanta. My first time there, I was there. Even though the Bulldogs beat down my Ducks, I was there. My nephew played for the Ducks. I appreciate that boy. Imarion, I appreciate it. But I saw some of the similar things in Atlanta that I see in Portland. In our poor communities, it's the cheapest food that keeps us at the hospital, that keeps us in these pharmaceutical trials, that keep us with diabetes, that keep us with hypertension, that keep us with obesity. And I'm asking myself, when is the Black community, when is the Congressional Black Caucus really going to say, let's deal with it? See, I want to be a voice, not to just articulate the issue. I want to be a voice to speak truth to power. That's what we got to do. We got to speak truth to power.
I mean, brother, you are talking. You are talking today. I mean, if you guys aren't picking up what this man is putting down, I can't help you. I just can't help you. You need to go and be dipped somewhere. Go get dipped, go get sprinkled, go get something.
And you know what, Dr. Holmes, we're doing a good job in terms of school board, but at the end of the day, at some point, I do plan to run for my local school board. The educational achievement gap, as we call it, right? At the end of the day, we just can't speak to the problem. I'm going all the way back to the beginning of what you mentioned, my friend, Dr. Holmes, and talk about how do we get our hands dirty?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our people refuse to get their hands dirty. My dad had several businesses. He made a lot of money, just several businesses. My dad was as uneducated as they came in terms of, having degrees. But my dad knew how to make a dollar. My dad would come home, Dr. Holmes, and his hands would be so dirty, fingernails would be so nasty. And my dad did what most Black men would do. Come home, he talking to my mama, she frying chicken, and she saying, hey, baby, how was your day? And my dad would take his dirty hand and reach over in that pan and grab him a chicken thigh and eat. I'd say, Daddy, your hands are dirty. He said, boy, these dirty hands got this chicken.
Yes, sir.
That's what and my encouragement to myself, every day I come to work, suit, tie, hard shoes. Where and how am I going to get these hands dirty?
Yeah.
When I come home at the end of the day, my hands got to be dirty, Dr. Holmes, because that is my indication that I've done something to help my people.
Yeah.
We stop getting our hands dirty now. See, we don't want to, my friend, you know this, and most of us know this, how to really eat collard greens and mustard greens and turnips. You don't eat them with a fork. You take your hand and dip them in the greens, right?
Got to do it.
Get the bread and you sop them in, and you see, this is how our people should be. We got to get them hands dirty.
Yeah.
Our hands aren't dirty enough. We too busy, getting the fork, trying to eat the greens and different things. No. We got to put our hands right in the issue and not be afraid. My friend, a lot of us are afraid to lose what we've gained. Civil rights movement leaders were not afraid to lose what it was they gained. They weren't afraid to lose it. We're afraid to lose it. Listen, I know we need to pay bills. Trust me, I understand. I'm not talking about being in a position to where we don't have structure, but I'm talking about how do we now become even more strategic?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my friend. Listen, you and I can go on all this all day, but it's around strategically getting our hands dirty. And where we have influence, we got to use that influence.
And, this takes me back when I think about your doctorate and kind of thinking about what you're saying right now. Your doctorate is in organizational leadership, which is about change.
Yeah.
And if we're ever going to change things in an organization, in a community, in the nation, we've got to be strategic, like you just said, but we also have to be okay with making people uncomfortable. And that also means we have to be okay with being uncomfortable because we may be out there by ourselves. And the one thing you just said, and this just struck home to me, we seek positions, but I don't want the position if you're not going to give me full power and access. And I turned down a job because they didn't want me to be as vocal. But I didn't step into the position to create the status quo.
Right.
I walked into the position because I desired change. And I know change was needed, especially for my people. So if I wasn't going to be the voice for them, I don't want the position. Give it to somebody else that will support you in being comfortable, because I'm not that guy.
And I won't say we've gotten fearful. I'll use the word apprehensive.
Yeah.
We don't want to make Massa mad. Okay. We don't want Massa to be upset with us. Now, even me, right? I've been told, well, you know, just wait till you get in there. Then they'll start listening to you. King and them didn't hold back when they went into President Johnson's office. I mean, the great A. Philip Randolph, I believe with President Roosevelt. I believe it was Roosevelt, one of the presidents, who told A. Philip Randolph, yeah, I know Black people are suffering. Yeah, I know there's racism. Yeah, I know the plight of Black people is bad. And he challenged A. Philip Randolph. He said, well, you make me do it. And what did Randolph do? He made him do it.
Yeah.
Right? This is by any means necessary.
Yeah, we're not waiting anymore. We want it now.
Listen, this is the issue. People have become apprehensive. Now, I'll tell you this, my friend. Where I'm at today in Multnomah County took me 25 years to get here. I was an office manager in the state of Oregon with a doctorate. I'll tell you why. Because I refused for my friends who were directors to give me a position. And they would say, Doc, you've earned this. I say, but if you give it to me, I'll be here when you be gone. What are you saying? When you leave, the people under you are still going to be here who had somebody else in mind that they thought should have got the position you gave me. If I don't earn it, I don't want it.
Yeah, yeah.
Where I'm at today, been fortunate enough, and God has blessed me to earn this position. I also serve, my friend, as one of the co-chairs for managers of color for the entire Multnomah County. In that position, I am afforded the privilege and opportunity to represent approximately now in Multnomah County, I would say maybe about 150 managers, along with my co-chair, Mrs. Tamora Barnes. I cannot afford to be in this position, Dr. Holmes, representing this many managers of ethnic and diverse background and be afraid to speak truth to power.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you, because we can no longer be interviewed, be consultants to these major television stations and look like we are puppets dangling from a string.
Yeah.
We can't look like in our articulation that somebody is pulling a string, and when we're about to say something, they yank us so that we say something else. We got to tell the truth. It doesn't matter to me. I respect Vice President Kamala Harris. But we got a sister in the White House, and nothing is still changing in the brickyard. Obama was there. I love Obama, but nothing is changing in the brickyard. We ourselves cannot be afraid. And for example, Portland, Oregon is a beautiful city. I am not afraid to declare to my people all around the country, Portland is a beautiful city. I've been here 51 years. All of my life. But Portland, Oregon, hear me when I say this, Dr. Holmes, is the most racist city outside of the South.
Woo!
We have racism that is covert. They'll look you in your eye and not just stab you in the back. They will look you in your eye and put that knife in your sternum.
Wow.
Please excuse the analogy to our colleagues. I'm not inciting violence. I'm just trying to use an analogy. So we have to, again, this is why I was teasing my wife the other day. I don't get invited to a lot of different circles because they know Dr. Richard is going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell the truth, right? You cannot be a politician like President Biden, be interviewed by Brother Charlemagne and tell our people, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black enough. And 2 years since you've been in office, we still have not achieved parity.
Yeah.
This is not a criticism of the president. This is just a fact, right?
And like you said earlier, and where's the accountability?
And again, and you and I both know, he's still going to get the black support. And I get that. No, I don't have a problem with that. People vote how they vote. But I'm not just voting for me.
Yeah.
I'm taking your words. Let me borrow, my friend. I'm not just voting for me. I'm voting for my community.
Yeah.
We cannot allow politicians to keep coming to us and sell us tickets and we can't get into the concert, the Mary J. Blige concert. You know, we can't hear LL Cool J run. We can't get into the concert. Why? Because the ticket is no good. We got to stop doing that. I don't care who it is. I don't care what party or movement they belong to. If you do not have a proven track record of supporting our people,
you can't get my vote.
We got to take a step back. They didn't just die for the right to vote. They died for the right to give us a choice to be educated about how we vote.
Most definitely.
So at the end of the day, my friend, when we look at all of this, and my doctoral work is really about leadership, because I believe most everything rises and falls on leadership. And if our black leaders do not shake themselves from the strings of the puppet and really hold people accountable in the public view. Don't tell me what you said behind closed doors. I wasn't at the White House. You know Tavis Smiley, our dear brother Tavis Smiley.
Yes, sir.
I wish he would bring back his conference or his summit on the state of Black America. He used to hold that, and I watched it annually, and CNN, I believe, and some of the cable news networks used to broadcast the entire summit. I wish, and he might be doing it now, and I just don't know about it because it's not on television. But I wish our brother would bring it back, because it's time to shift. And we have to bring up brothers like you, brothers like myself, Dr. DeAndre Taylor. We got to bring up different sisters and brothers around the country who are ready to take the baton and say, let's chart this path. Because the generations behind us, a lot of them ain't going to get education.
Yeah.
They're trying to be rappers.
Yeah. Listen, if we think about our trajectory, we were on an upward mobility, and as of recently, we have flatlined.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to get back on track.
Yes.
Well, listen, this is part one, guys. We haven't even tackled this man as a professor, right? We've just dealt with the leadership aspect. So we are going to have to come back. He's already given you enough to make you say, I'm in, I'm sold, I need part two. So what I want you guys to do is hold tight. This is part one with Dr. Carlos Jermaine Richard, and we're going to come back with part two. Get ready, get buckled up. This is going somewhere special. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time here on the Black Doctors Talk podcast.